This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Franny's Pharmacy.
Now more than ever, it's important that our society focuses more on our mental and physical health. At Franny's Pharmacy, the team is committed to their community's need of being happy, healthy, and stress-free. Come learn how Franny's Pharmacy can assist you in a clean, professional environment with their expert bud tenders that are excited to educate you about the benefits of their lab-tested, DEA-certified CBD products. Franny's Pharmacy also offers wholesale and franchise opportunities. Visit their website at frannysPharmacy.com, and that's pharmacy with an F, and use the promo code CannaConnect10 for an exclusive Cannabinoid Connect discount. Again, that's Franny's Pharmacy with an F.com and use the promo code CannaConnect10 for an exclusive Cannabinoid Connect discount. Franny's Pharmacy, putting the farm back into pharmacy.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Canna Health.
Hey cannabis consumers, have you ever consumed a cannabis product thinking it'll make you feel a certain way, but then it doesn't? Don't you wish you had a clear understanding of your own DNA so that you could make informed decisions about what type of cannabis products interact best with your system? Well, now you can with EndoDNA. EndoDNA is a simple DNA test that maps your entire endocannabinoid system and then matches that summary with a specific cannabinoid ratio and terpene profile that best aligns with your unique genotype. Imagine being armed with personal information when visiting a dispensary. You'll have the knowledge and power and capability to purchase products that best align with your genotype. Visit their website to purchase the EndoDNA Collection Kit and Endo Decoded Report at endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. Again, that's endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. The future of cannabinoid therapeutics is here with EndoDNA. Hey David, what's going on?
Living the dream here. How about yourself?
Same, man. Living the dream, doing cannabis podcasts. What more can you ask for, you know?
Hey, I help people get jobs in cannabis. It's awesome because it's a hopeful thing for a lot of people. The idea of working in cannabis, and hope is a powerful thing, especially these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we saw that Leafly jobs report back in February that talked about, I think, over 500,000 Americans now working in the cannabis industry, which is really exciting. I think it's one of the leading industries right now in terms of job growth. But David, before we jump into, some hiring trends specific to the cannabis industry, I first want to ask you, as a recruiting industry veteran, it's a crazy time. It's a candidate's market right now, from what I've heard. And I can't imagine from a recruiter's standpoint how things have shifted and changed, since the pandemic hit.
Oh, it's everything has shifted and changed. The good thing about cannabis is that people are interested in working in it at all levels. I think 90% of the workforce in cannabis is sort of, we'll call it frontline hourly work, and there's obviously a lot of news talking about the challenges of getting people, to go to work at retail or whatever. But cannabis, in some ways, is its own unique story because of the growth opportunity for folks to get a job in the industry now and the trajectory of the industry over the next decade or so. But you definitely see the same effects on like more management leadership positions, jobs that could be done virtually for candidates that don't want to go into an office. But I think the great thing about cannabis is more and more people are looking at cannabis as a mainstream career opportunity, and so it's I feel fortunate in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense what you said, and I'll just kind of put it in terms of like, it seems like there's this window, right, where the industry is burgeoning, it's figuring itself out, but it's that right time to jump in terms of really, solidifying yourself in a different career path within the industry. So is that what you're finding? And who exactly are you helping when it comes to placement in the cannabis industry as the CEO and founder of FlowerHire?
Well, first off, I think FlowerHire historically, our focus has been what I call six-figure cannabis jobs. So we focus on functional leaders, managers, and executives. And if you look at a vertically integrated plant touching company, which meaning it has retail, maybe it has cultivation, it has its own brands, there's more of a diversity of job function and title in a cannabis business than I think any other industry. So we last year placed over 30 different functions within a cannabis company with an average salary of $140,000, from CEO and president to accounting manager or retail GM. So huge variety in terms of types of roles that FlowerHire and my team fills. And to get back to your point on, I think there's definitely something about being a first mover in this industry that working in cannabis is not for everybody, and that's okay. But for folks that can excel in the profession, as the industry becomes more mature, the way the recruitment typically works is the first thing companies look for is industry experience. Well, right now we're at this unique time historically where industry experience doesn't exist, and the hundreds of thousands of people that work in cannabis and the 80,000 people that got a job in cannabis last year, the majority had never worked professionally in cannabis before. So, what that means is 12 months from now, that supervisor job, that manager job that gets open at your company, if you get a job in the industry, there's no one more qualified for that than yourself, right? And so I think a lot of first movers, maybe took a lateral or maybe even took a step back to get into this industry, but that should be short term, and we're longer term, they can actually accelerate their growth for getting involved in cannabis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you answered my question. I was going to ask you, what was the ratio of candidates, between the legacy operators, like what you call it within the industry, and then those who are transitioning in from other industries? And it sounds like you said, over the past year, it's been people from the outside coming in.
Well, when I started FlowerHire about 5 years ago, almost 90% of our placements in the first 18 months or so had never worked professionally in cannabis before, right? That being said, in the past year, it's actually been about 50-50. So 50% we're still pulling from, agriculture and agricultural processing, retail, consumer packaged goods, manufacturing, hospitality, those type of industries. But the other half have worked professionally in cannabis, and some of those have been growing cannabis commercially for a long time, or others, had a career in one of the first industries that I named, but came to work in cannabis 2-3 years ago and want to stay here. They just need to find growth and opportunity, or a more stable boat to work on.
Right. Well, what does the process look for each of those candidate types? You mentioned the 50-50 split. So is it more outward headhunting and recruiting for leaders that are not within the cannabis space? And if so, what are those conversations like? And then on the flip side, when you're talking with people within the cannabis industry, what does that process look like? That are they looking for more of advancement in their career path in terms of the next kind of managerial level, or?
Yeah, well, you're right. It is two different types of conversations, depending on if the person had worked professionally in cannabis or not. For folks that have never worked professionally in cannabis, our job is education, first and foremost. Again, what I said before, working in cannabis is not right for everybody, and that's okay. So let's talk about what I mean by that. It's a startup type pace. It's not a work-life balance industry, but not in the way that you traditionally think. It's not like you have a boss breathing down your neck 12 hours a day if you're not at your desk. It's more like there's just so much work to do that you're compelled to have to do it. And so what I look for folks that have never worked professionally in cannabis is, obviously there's a certain experience that companies that are using FlowerHire want to see professionally in candidates that are coming into the industry. But aside from that, I look for folks that have worked in a variety of different companies. Maybe they've worked at a big company, maybe they've done a startup before, or they've been through a hyper growth phase at a company, so they understand what that pace means, and they have a relationship with the plant. Meaning, They believe in the right side of history. They believe in it as medicine. They believe in it. It's a way to right the wrongs of a failed war on drugs for society. Whatever it is, what I tell people is learning how to work in a startup from a pace perspective and learning cannabis is just too much, right? They have to already understand what that means and want that for themselves, right? Because FlowerHire traditionally places experienced professionals, and at that point, someone's an experienced professional, it's better to be honest about it, about what they're getting into than being surprised at the end, or them taking a job and not liking it, and it makes more work for all of us. For the folks though, the candidate base, the 50% that we place that have worked professionally in cannabis, a lot of those folks, they're more passive, they're more confidential, but they recognize that there's value to their experience, meaning there's not a lot of folks like them that maybe had a career for 10 years in consumer packaged goods and have 2 years of working in cannabis in an operations or marketing function. And because of that, even though for the folks that have never worked in cannabis, often they're taking lateral moves salary-wise, or sometimes even a step back. For the folks currently working in the industry that are changing jobs within the industry, you see more of that compensation growth for sure, because companies in the industry will pay up for it because they don't have to train as much on what it's like working in the industry. And theoretically, that experienced professional with cannabis will hit the ground running in a sense. That being said, again, I still see demand for folks that are work professionally in this industry. Cannabis needs to hire lots of people that are at the executive level, right, that have never worked professionally in cannabis. So it is really that mixture, and it's my job as a founder of a service provider that deals in six-figure cannabis jobs to cater our service to the needs not only of both types of candidates, but also help companies in the industry figure out what is the right solution for their specific role based on the job and the location and the rest of the organization, that the fit proposition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like a exciting time for the candidates, especially that were already professionals in the cannabis industry, because as you mentioned, like it's almost like they're like sitting there going, okay, well, look at all these opportunities. Like, what do I want to do in this growing industry that I already know so much about from one side, but maybe, I'd like to learn this. Are you seeing trends where these existing professionals in cannabis have an appetite for, maybe moving outside of cultivation into, say, more of a business operations role or managerial role? Or is it kind of,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. So I think, you have if you're working cultivation as a technician, becoming a supervisor or a manager, yes. But, if you're working cultivation, taking on, and you're already a leader, taking on a bigger scope potentially of running all of production, which means cultivation, processing and packaging, and even the manufacturing of products from that wholesale flower. So there's definitely, people in the industry that are looking to take on larger scopes, whether that's more functions underneath them or more like locations or a bigger size of facility. Yeah, for sure. But I think that most of the time, companies are using a service like ours to find folks that have already done, 80% of the job, or, and have the ability and excitement, enthusiasm to come up and learn the rest as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. I know that you're focused more on the placement and recruiting side, but I mean, from your perspective, being so focused in that process, I mean, you mentioned the mixture of, again, the new entrants versus the existing professionals. And so what does that working relationship look like? I mean, how is that going thus far?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. Like, we've always at FlowerHire tried to be sort of strategic and of cannabis. And one of the things I was kind of fascinated by 5 years ago is, a longtime fan of the plant and, a career headhunter, was the idea of what is a cannabis executive? What does that look like? Who is that person?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the modern professional in today's emerging industry. And as I understood more about who those people were, I realized how hard their jobs were and how complex they were. And so I've sought to bring value, not only to people working in the industry in terms of content, information, insights, but also people that are curious about the industry of like what it really is like. I do think highlighting the professionals that are working in cannabis is a way to make cannabis itself more mainstream and move the industry forward. So I really, really enjoyed that. I mean, we're definitely not perfect. We're working on some things, but I do feel an element of gratitude from our, client customers and our candidates. And I think my team, does a really good job of coming in and trying to, build a conscious cannabis community, one hire at a time, by getting the right people, the right jobs with the right companies in this industry. And it is really exciting because on some level, it's like, I'm not FlowerHire is not a sexy business. We try to make recruiting sexy, but it's just not something people like to talk about that much. But we're railroads and power lines. Like, we did placements in 15 states. And when you talk about being able to unite the people of this industry in these different states, like, one of the things we try to do is build community and connect good people with good people. And if you can help facilitate that, not only do you move the industry forward, but you also, it's easy to find companies that have hiring needs, because this industry is just scaling.
Right. And having that much exposure and like you said, the 15 different states, I think over time you start to have a good sense of, okay, there's a good match here with this candidate, right? Or this company would be particularly beneficial for this personality type.
Well, for sure. And even, I think every state has its own look and feel of its own cannabis culture, its own cannabis industry identity. And that's kind of really exciting to be able to like compare and contrast and what states are like what, but but that being said, it's about how do we continue to be relevant in terms of what's on the pulse. And I think we can relate often to our clients who are at some element of a growth curve that are hiring for a certain type of position and the reasons why they're hiring for that position. And we can help guide them based on the type of talent we've seen succeed in this space for similarly positioned companies. So there's definitely trends, that I see from a company evolution standpoint. And there's, big corporate cannabis with, thousands of employees, and there's small private mom and pop kind of growth stage organizations. And there's, dreamers that are trying to figure out how to get a license or trying to figure out how to like open up, from, or raise money so that they can take advantage of having a license. So there's definitely different stages of companies in this space, for sure. And it is fascinating to really try to not only have like a kind of a national presence, but also be locally relevant. And FlowerHire has folks working for us currently in 10 different states on the ground that try to immerse themselves in those local or those state level industries.
Yeah. It's good that you service, all companies of all sizes, right? The small mom and pops, the medium to the small to medium size, and then of course your large MSOs, because it's all new and everyone's trying to figure it out, right? And they're all needing help. And to that point, I want to ask you, what are some of the biggest considerations that professionals should consider before entering the cannabis industry from another industry? I know you talked about the pace, right? And how, as an owner of a startup, there's so many crazy things that come your way. But then, of course, adding the cannabis industry to it, it's insane. So what are some other considerations?
Well, I think that just traditionally people have a very sort of linear view of career development. Like, I'm a associate, I'm a senior associate, I'm a manager, I'm a director. cannabis is not mature yet. So entering into the industry in your lane, in your functional lane in terms of your career experience, no matter what your title is, your titles will normalize over the course of time. But even if, you're used to being a director, but you're a manager in cannabis, you will probably have more strategic responsibility than you did as a director in the other industry. So looking at it like that, I think looking at it like, this is not a get rich quick industry. I do think it's an opportunity to create generational wealth for communities and for working in the industry, but it's not like, there are easier ways to make a quick buck, I think, maybe not as exciting, but so the dreams of like going and open up your own shop or whatever, like realistically, that's really hard and takes millions of dollars to do. Better off just getting a job in the space and, learning, meeting people in the industry, no matter what that role is, and trying to figure out, what you want to do long term in the industry. Don't, again, I think it's attractive to want to work in cannabis, but it's not about like getting rich. It's about finding alignment in your work where what you do to make money, what you're good at, and what you think makes the world a better place, there's a fit. And for people working in cannabis that feel that, there's nothing quite like it. And so that's what's most important. Like, don't look at this as pure capitalism. You look at it as, I'm going to make the world a better place, and I'm going to do something unique with my career and my life. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. Same question, biggest considerations, but now let's flip it to the candidate that has been an existing professional within the cannabis space. What is some considerations and advice you would give to that candidate who's looking to excel in the industry?
It's about team. At the end of the day, in any type of company or any type of industry, especially like one that's fast paced and startup-y, it's about team. But in cannabis, yes, people deserve to make as much money as possible, no matter what, whatever the market value of their skill is. But it's also about doing it with the right team, with the right level of culture. I think that's the most important thing to look at in terms of someone's own happiness, right? Is working with people that you value working with and that value you appropriately.
That's good. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I'm sure that those listening do as well. Couple other questions as we wrap up. So let's talk about the current hot opportunities within the cannabis industry. What, positions are you seeing that are frequently available and that you're placing for, and what else is trending within the market?
Well, one thing I think, just take a step back for a second, is, and I said a little bit about this earlier, but there is more of a diversity of job type and job function in cannabis than anywhere else, because it's agriculture. So it's like cannabis cultivation factories, basically. It's turning flower of cannabis into products. It's transporting those products. It's retail, it's delivery, it's, marketing, it's compliance, it's quality, it's legal, it's finance and accounting, it's all those things. So, no matter what someone's background is, there's a fit. Not to mention all the ancillary businesses like FlowerHire that serve an industry with that much sort of variety and breadth to it, whether it's a service, whether it's selling products to the industry. So, you never know, maybe ancillary is the right place to start versus working for a plant touching operator. That being said, the trends in terms of employment and what's hot, I think, that site level, operator who's running a retail location or several retail locations or a manufacturing or production facility, like who's done it maybe in, warehousing or food and beverage manufacturing or whatever, like that person that can run those type of facilities, be the adult in the room, if you will, is very much in demand. It's probably, a good portion, if not, half of what we actually end up filling, running site operations of some facility in the space. I've seen a big trend towards HR, like cannabis is hiring lots of HR professionals, from HR business partners up to chief people officers. as cannabis tries to be not only the best industry it can be, in this modern era. I see a lot of growth towards like construction and project management. If there's a company that's trying to open up multiple facilities of some kind, like dedicated project managers or construction focused people, sorry about to sneeze, to help hit those deadlines and those goals. That's a big thing in demand. I think accounting, finance, those sort of back office roles, this industry, some of the hardest jobs to fill are that. I mean, because it tends to be a more conservative demographic, anyway. So it's really sort of, again, this industry is hiring at all levels, but those sort of site operations, human resources, project management, and construction, those are the biggest things I've seen in demand.
Mm-hmm. What are your growth predictions for the cannabis industry in 2022 and beyond?
I mean, we're going to continue to see new states pass adult use, pass medical programs. I mean, I think, the whole New York area and everything that's happening in the Northeast right now. I mean, if you look at, I think, Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey, it's bigger than the size of California marketplace. And it's not starting from with the exception of Pennsylvania, it's not starting from a very mature medical market either. So a lot of growth. I think they're going to continue to see the biggest job creator in this country over the next several years is going to continue to be cannabis, and all the related businesses in that. I think that, at some point the federal government's going to weigh in, and hopefully it's supportive in terms of safe banking and allowing institutions to lend to this business and protecting the people working in the industry for getting away from cash and all those things. But it could also fundamentally change the industry itself. It could allow for interstate commerce. It could allow for it could tax it even more heavily than it is. And, change is the one thing that is certain at this time. It's going real fast, but it's also standing in quicksand.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that. Change is inevitable, but we don't know what that change is. So it's like everyone's on pins and needles as to how this thing shakes out. But it definitely is an exciting and interesting time. And as we wrap up, I want to ask you, David, so FlowerHire, what's y'all's focus for 2022 and beyond? What are some goals and some business objectives that y'all are focused on?
Love it. We last year saw 150% growth in our core business of six-figure placement. We want to continue that trajectory and add more people to our core team. We also kind of spun out FlowerHire Senior Advisors last year, which does retained executive search, think like C-suite placement, even though, those type of positions deserve a different type of service, even though it is at cannabis speed still. We're starting an HR advisory practice that'll come in and do human capital audits and build out performance management and or compensation strategy. And we're doing these sort of regional cannabis executive happy hour and or events in 8 key markets around the country this year. And last year we helped bring to market a software product for hiring hourly workers in cannabis called FlowerHire X. The traditional six-figure placement world of FlowerHire, leaves 90% of all jobs in cannabis underserved. And so we found some partners with a company called Engine Sciences to bring to market a sort of lightweight applicant tracking system that distributes jobs and helps matches people seeking a career in cannabis with the right job. So want to continue to see that progress. That's already led to hundreds of hires in the last 6 months. And so not a lack of things to do. That's one thing about cannabis. There's plenty of white space out there. And I've tried to stay very focused on building sort of our core service business. And, we're starting to add some things directly related to that business that hopefully continues to provide some level of moat between our organization and our relationship with our clients and other folks that may come into the industry or are already here that are competitors. I think we're really look at ourselves as, we're our own competition. Let's continue to innovate and stay ahead of the curve, and come in every day and be grateful for the opportunity to try to make the world a better place through getting people jobs in cannabis.
Yeah. That's a great mindset to have, man. Just kind of be grateful in the space that you're working in, stay focused and focus on those core competencies, like you said, right? What are you best at, and then build off of that. And it sounds that that's what y'all have been doing and doing a great job at it. So you heard it. Go ahead.
I don't want to blurt, but and I should have said this earlier, but what we really look for too when people have never worked professionally in cannabis, gratitude and humility. Like, are you able to, no matter how experienced you are in your career, bend the knee to somebody who's been to jail for this plant, or realize you're still going to have to relearn your tools that you've built through your career in order to be successful here. And if people have that humility, it goes a long way for being successful here. But if you don't come into cannabis with humility, it will humble you, and that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. It's well said, my man. Yep. David, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. Really appreciate it. I got a lot out of it. I know that the audience did. Where can people find FlowerHire if they want to visit y'all's website or social media to learn more?
Sure. FlowerHire.com is our website. I follow us on Instagram. It's FlowerHire. LinkedIn, we have a fairly active presence. And my contact information, I am David at FlowerHire.com.
That's right. You heard it from David Belsky first, the CEO and founder of FlowerHire. Thank you so much for your time, David. Really appreciated it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.